Yo, what's that word? This is the 32 Union Podcast. I'm your host, Brodrick. Welcome to episode 8. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the NFL draft, fantasy draft that is, a little bit about each player and why that's important. So, the criteria for this episode, I'm going to talk about my personal opinion on each NFL team. Who would be the first pick that you should take? Now, that could be a player, that could be a specialist, or that could be a certain positional unit. This is going to be based upon the stats that they provided from ESPN.com last year. So, there's going to be a lot of information thrown at y'all, so bear with me. The first team, since we're going in alphabetical order, is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. Now I picked James Conner. Last year he had 202 attempts, 752 yards, 15 touchdowns, 37 receptions, 375 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I think he has a good chance to keep up that production with DeAndre Hopkins out for the first 6 games. Marquise Brown is going to provide a lot of breathing room with his deep speed. Next, we're going to move on to the Atlanta Falcons with Kyle Pitts. Last year had 68 catches, 1,026 yards, and 1 touchdown. Now, I know that's a low touchdown number, but I think that's going to span a lot this year with the addition of Drake London and Brian Edwards. I think he's going to see a lot more not coverage slanted to his side. I think Marcus Mariota, they're going to run the ball a lot more, so maybe he'll get more chances on play action passing opportunities. Next, we're going to move on to the Baltimore Ravens. And I picked Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker, last year, he was 94% on his field goals. 94%, 35 of 37. He was 100% on his extra points, 32 of 32. He had a long of 67 yards, and he scored the fourth most points in the NFL last year with 137. I know some of y'all probably would have went with Lamar Jackson, but I'm going to have to see how it go. I don't really trust his receiver. He got a lot of young options, and so I'm going to have to see how it goes. But I think Justin Tucker is probably the best kicker in the NFL, so I think this is a safe and valuable pick. So next we're going to go with the Buffalo Bills. And of course I went with Stephon Diggs. Last year he had 103 catches, 1,225 yards and 10 touchdowns. Then that's really self-explanatory. Even though I expect Josh Allen to have a great year passing the ball, we know who his number one target is. And I will understand if you pick Josh Allen because we all expect Gabriel Davis to have a breakout year, good running backs, good offensive line. The Bills are going to be explosive. Obviously, they're a Super Bowl contender. But Stephon Diggs, he always provides a lot of value. Carolina Panthers. I picked Christian McCaffrey. If this guy could stay healthy, we know what he can do as far as from a scoring standpoint and the value he has in every fantasy league. Last year he had 99 attempts for 442 yards, scored a touchdown. Again, this pick is dependent on him staying healthy. Then we move on to the Chicago Bears. I picked Darnell Mooney. It was hard to find somebody for the Bears, to be honest. I almost went with David Montgomery, but I went Darnell Mooney. I think he was a surprise to a lot of people. A lot of people might have used him as a flex option last year. Last year he had 81 catches, 1,005 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I could see him getting up to 6 touchdowns this year, maybe even 7. Teams got more film on him, but I expect a second-year leap from their quarterback. Maybe not to the extent of a Patrick Mahomes second-year leap, but better than last year. I think they got a stronger coaching staff, so I look for Darnell to have a slightly better season and a big upgrade on his fantasy season. So moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals. This was hard, and actually what I wrote down here, I'm going to tell you what I wrote, then I'll tell you what I think. I wrote Jamar Chase. Last year he had 81 catches for 1,455 yards and 13 touchdowns. Obviously, great production, great fantasy values, 13 touchdowns as a rookie. Went to the Super Bowl. They could have won it. But honestly, I think I should have went with Joe Mixon here. I didn't have his stats written down, but we know he produces a lot rushing and receiving the ball. He just receives a lot of touches overall throughout the course of a game. He breaks a lot of tackles. He provides a lot of value. Personally, I thought about this after the fact. Either one of them are great picks, but I would personally, if I had to pick first from the Cincinnati Bengals, I would personally go with Joe Mixon. But I understand equivocally why somebody would pick Jamar Chase. Then we go with the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, I went with Nick Chubb. Last year, he had 228 attempts for 1,259 yards, 8 touchdowns. He had 20 catches for 174 yards and 1 touchdown. With Deshaun Jackson out for the first 11 games, I expect this to be a Nick Chubb offense. Even when Deshaun Watson comes back, he's going to be, sorry if I said Deshaun Jackson, but with Deshaun Watson out, I still expect it to be Nick Chubb offense when he returns. He looked very rusty in the preseason, and the man has been out for over a year and a half, so I expect him to be rusty when he comes back and to rely on Nick Chubb. Maybe put in the play-action passing game, have him involved in that, going out for routes. I expect his receiving yards to go up this year. Kareem Hunt has requested a trade, as we know, so Nick Chubb's value can only increase from here. Say Kareem Hunt is traded, that's even more touches. Amari Cooper is going to open up a lot of things for Nick Chubb this year. The defense is going to put the offense on the field a lot. I think they're going to cause a lot of 3 and out. So I expect this to be a big year for Nick Chubb. Next, we got the Dallas Cowboys. I picked Tony Pollard for his versatility. Last year, he had 130 rushing attempts, 719 yards, 2 touchdowns. And he caught 39 of 46 balls thrown his way for 337 yards. He had 17 kick returns for 489 yards and 1 touchdown. So all around strong versatility. This strong player overall. I think it's safe to say at this point that it's hard for Ezekiel Elliott to make it through an entire season. So again, this would be a good flex option for you guys. Maybe somebody, if you watching who the Dallas plays, what they want to do, if they want to air it out a little bit more. I think that Tony Pollard would be a safe, nice, and valuable pick. Again, y'all like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate y'all. Visit Hattie's Collection. We're going to move on here to the Denver Broncos. Now, I wanted so bad to go with Russell Wilson here. I really did. Obviously, they picked up Nathaniel Hackett. He's going to want to throw the ball a lot. Give Russell Wilson the control that he was never going to have under Pete Carroll. And he's going to be slinging the ball around. Now, I believe they lost Tim Patrick to an ACL injury, but they still have Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy out there, and along with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon III. So he has a strong cast of skill players. I understand why somebody want to go with him, especially with the amount of control he's going to have over the entire offense. But I went with second-year running back from North Carolina, Javonte Williams. Last year, he had 203 attempts for 903 yards, 4 touchdowns. He caught 43 balls for 316 yards and 3 touchdowns. Obviously, great production for a rookie. I expect that to expand more. I think he's going to catch a lot more balls out of the backfield and be more productive as a runner with the receiving threats out there. And I think he's going to be one of the breakout stars in the NFL this year. Next, we're going to move on to the Detroit Lions. Again, another team. This is fairly hard. I almost went with DJ Chark. As we know, he has good deep speed. So I thought maybe he can catch a couple long touchdowns, as they're probably going to be playing catch-up a lot. But I went with T.J. Hawkinson, tight end. I think he's a young emerging tight end. Last year he had 61 catches for 583 yards and 4 touchdowns. Solid production for a player of his age with a lot of potential. I think he's going to be one of the better tight ends in the league in the next couple of years. Again, 4 touchdowns. I think he can get that up to around 7 touchdowns. And he has a chance to be the #1 receiving threat for this offense this year. So I'm excited about him, and I think we all want to see what Dan Campbell has in store for this team and for him in particular. Next, we're going to move on to the Green Bay Packers. I think this one was fairly obvious. Anytime you have a chance to pick the MVP of the National Football League, you're going to go with that player. So I picked Aaron Rodgers. Last year, he had 4,115 passing yards with incredible efficiency with 37 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions. I didn't even look up the rushing yards for this player. Obviously, anytime you got a chance to pick Aaron Rodgers, you kind of got to go with him because you know he's going to be efficient with the football. He's going to provide a lot of value and a lot of touchdowns every year. Obviously, it's going to be hard to replace Davante Adams. The ball is going to have to be spread around. So I can understand why people might pick Aaron Jones in this place. But I got a lot of belief in Sammy and the other veteran receivers, Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb. So he has a lot of experience throwing to those guys, knowing where they're going to be. And he's arguably the most talented quarterback in the league. So I got a lot of faith in Aaron Rodgers to come through with this pick for me and for you if you make him your first pick. Next, I have the Houston Texans. Solid. I mean, it was hard to find options with this team too, but I ended up landing on Brandon Cooks. Safe pick. Last year, Brandon Cook had 90 catches for 1,037 yards and 6 touchdowns. Not too much to say about that. He's had a few seasons. I think every season in his career he's at over 1,000 yards. So he's reliable in that sense. Obviously, Davis Mills is quarterback. We're going to have to see. But if you had to pick a player from the Houston Texans, I think this is the player that's going to give you that stability, that safe pick. So that's why I chose to go with him. We have the Indianapolis Colts next. To me, this probably going to be, I probably shouldn't even say this, but this probably going to be my first overall pick if I get the first pick. But Jonathan Taylor, last year he had 337 attempts, 1,811 yards, 18 rushing touchdowns. He had 40 catches, 360 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Dude was simply a beast. In my opinion, the best running back in the NFL. He's going to provide you a lot of value. He's probably going to, by himself, win some people some leagues this year. So, obviously, this is a great pick. Not too much else to say about it. Jacksonville, the hometown. I almost went with Travis Etienne this year, even though he was lost for the whole year. I think the offensive line really improved. I think they're going to try to run it a lot with their new head coach. But I went with Christian Kirk. They paid the guy a big contract, so we know he's going to receive a lot of targets if he's able to be healthy. Last year he had 77 catches for 982 yards and 5 touchdowns. I think he's going to have a similar year, to be honest. He has a lot of decent receivers around here with Marvin Jones. And I think he's going to have a similar year. So he's another safe pick. I don't expect this offense to be majorly explosive in the second year. I think they're going to rely on their defense like they just did recently here under Tom Coughlin. We know how his team like to operate. A sneaky pick here for me personally would have been Evan Ingram. I always liked him as more of a slot receiver than a tight end. Linebackers can't seem to keep up with him. Neither can safeties. He's too big. So I can see why somebody would go with Evan Ingram here, but I went with Christian Kirk. Next we have the Kansas City Chiefs. This one was easy for me too. We had Patrick Mahomes. Last year he had 4,839 yards with 37 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. He had 66 rushing attempts, 381 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, I don't think anybody should be surprised about the passing efficiency and passing stats of Patrick Mahomes. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. In my opinion, by a large margin. It's the 67 rushing attempts. We know, I mean, for better or worse, his offensive line wasn't the greatest last year. So I understand why he had so many rushing attempts. He scrambles out of the pocket a lot. He only had 2 touchdowns, but, you know, that can come in the clutch sometime. Maybe that'll rise this year. 13 touchdowns. That was kind of surprising, but we know he's a gunslinger. We know he's going to take chances. And Tyreek Hill is going to be a big loss for him. So I can understand why somebody would put Travis Kelce here. He always seems to have double-digit touchdowns and a lot of yards for a tight end. Maybe lead the league for yards for a tight end or as a receiver. So I can understand why somebody would pick Travis Kelce here. I personally went with Patrick Mahomes. I think a lot of coverages are going to be drifted towards Travis Kelce's side, and we know a down year for him could still consist of over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. So either one of them is a real good pick. Next, we have the Miami Dolphins. Surprisingly, the Miami Dolphins had a couple players that I think could be chose from. But I just went with the previous player that I mentioned when I was speaking on the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's Tyreek Hill. Fastest player in the league. Been that way for a while. Last year, he had 111 catches, 1,239 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Jalen Waddle is going to open up a lot for him. Raheem Mostert, Sony Michel, they have a great running back unit. They got all the skill talent. They bettered their offensive line with Teron Armstead, Connor Williams, a new head coach from the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. So I expect a lot from them. I expect a lot from this offense. The only thing they need to tie together is Tua. Now, me personally, I don't have much belief in Tua. But if he's going to make the leap and be the player that he was drafted to be, then this is the year. This year and maybe next year. But in the meantime, I think Tyreek Hill is going to provide immense value simply because he's unguardable one-on-one. They're going to have to shift coverage to the side. That's going to leave Jalen Waddle open. Jalen Waddle might be a good flex option for some weeks, depending on who they play. If you guys check out the secondaries and things of that nature, I know I am. So this is going to have to be a week-to-week thing. Moving on to the Minnesota Vikings. This was a hard choice. I went with 2 players. So I think I'm going to settle on Justin Jefferson. He had 103 catches for 1,616 yards and 10 touchdowns. Obviously, the other player was Dalvin Cook. In my opinion, a top 5 running back in the league. Dalvin just has a hard time staying healthy. Obviously, I love him. Florida State alum. But Justin Jefferson, just seeing those yards and the efficiency he had with the touchdowns and the amount of catches he had, I just had to go with Justin Jefferson. I think we're going to see a lot of gritties from him this year in the end zone. So next, we got the New England Patriots. I almost went with the defense here, but I ended up going with Hunter Henry. Last year he had 50 receptions for 603 yards and 9 touchdowns. Obviously 9 touchdowns is a great number for a tight end. I think Mac Jones has already established a solid connection with him. So I can see these guys doing a lot of damage this year. And I expect Jonas Smith to still operate in his second tight end role, but to still have the ability to stretch the field away and divert attention away from Hunter Henry in a way that's going to keep him effective. Next, we have the New Orleans Saints. I know he's going through some legal trouble right now, but I still went with Alvin Kamara. Last year, he had 240 tips for 893 yards and 4 touchdowns. He caught 47 passes for 439 yards and 5 touchdowns. If you know anything, Alvin Kamara has always been NFL fantasy stud. He always going to produce you double-digit touchdowns, going to get you good yards, whether that's receiving and rushing the football. And sometimes they might put him back there at kick return. He's a very valuable player. And we just got to see if his situation is going to clear up by the regular season. Other than that, there's really no doubts on that end. Obviously, Michael Thomas is coming back. We got to see how he is coming off of essentially 2 years without playing. They got Jameis Winston throwing in the ball. We know he's going to take chances. So with a new head coach, I think they're going to settle down, throw it a lot out of the backfield. So again, if Alvin Kamara is there, I expect him to catch a lot of balls. Another pick here could have been Taysom Hill, moving him to tight end. He seems to have great athleticism, but I think he's a little farther down in the pecking order. But again, it determines on who the other team is, who they got at linebacker, who they got at safety, what is their defense designed to do. Then I think this team has a lot of skill position talent to where if you had to pick a player from the Saints, you could weigh the options of what you want to do. Moving on. We're moving on to the New York Jets. I picked Saquon Barkley. Now, obviously, he has to stay healthy for this to come to fruition. Last year, he had 162 rushing attempts, 593 yards with 2 touchdowns. He caught 41 passes for 213 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, this all depends on Saquon staying healthy and him getting back to his rookie year form. It's going to be tough. I think Evan Neal was a great pick on the offensive line for the pass game and the run game. Obviously, coming from that Alabama O-line factory, he was great in run blocking and pass protection. I think he's going to be a huge asset. Obviously, they got Andrew Thomas over there on the left side. So he's going to have two good, solid, young bookends. It's going to be through the middle where, if you want to say a concern, I mean, the offensive line has taken hits over the years, but they have gotten better with their drafting and their free agency signing. And they actually got, I think they upgraded the head coach with Brian Daboll. So I expect Saquon to have a solid year if he can stay healthy. Obviously, defense is going to be tuned in to stopping him. I don't think defenses have much respect for Daniel Jones, but for Daniel Jones, this is the year he got to show if he's the quarterback or not. So if you had to take a pick, I think Saquon would be a great pick. He's going to receive a lot of touches this year. Next, we're moving on to my team, Jets, Jets. Now, I went with Michael Carter. Last year, he had 147 rushing attempts for 639 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also had 36 catches for 325 yards. He didn't have any catches for touchdowns. I see that change this year because I think he's going to take on a more of a third down back role with Breece Hall coming in. I think Breece Hall was the number 1 ranked running back in this year's class. He went in the second round. New York Jets traded up for him, which I thought was a good pick. I thought the Jets had a great draft, but of course, it's my team. I'm a little biased there, but I think Breece Hall is going to be the number 1 back. Hopefully, he can stay healthy. I think Michael Carter is going to have a solid year, too. I think he's going to still get a lot of carries. Obviously, he had a good rookie year. I think he's going to receive a lot of those third down touches, whether that's catches, short yardage situations, any kind of way. He performed as a rookie. I think he's going to continue to perform. It sucks that Zach Wilson obviously just sustained an injury. He's said to have a 4 to 6 week recovery timeline, so hopefully he's back by the regular season. If he's not, I'm glad we got a veteran quarterback in Joe Flacco who can lead the way, but we're going to have to see. For the Jets, I pick Michael Carter. Moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, this is another place where you could have went with multiple players. I ended up going with the new wide receiver signing, A.J. Brown. Last year, he had 63 catches for 869 yards and 5 touchdowns. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles ran the ball more than any team in the NFL last year. So, they didn't have the fastest pace, but I think it's going to apply Jalen Hurts with a lot of play action opportunities. They got Devontae Smith over there. Quez Watkins is going to open up a lot of stuff with his deep speed. So I think A.J. Brown he's a good pick for the touchdown in his possession. He's going to catch a lot of balls this year. Moving on, speed up a little bit for y'all, to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I went with Najee Harris. Last year he had 307 attempts for 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. Caught 74 passes. Really surprised by that. For 467 yards and 3 touchdowns. Obviously, they're going to be working with a new quarterback this year. So we know the offensive line isn't that strong. Might be hard to duplicate this production, especially with them losing a wide receiver in free agency too. But I mean, we're going to have to see. So for the Steelers, I want Najee Harris. On the San Francisco 49ers, I could understand if anybody went with George Kittle, best tight end in the NFL, in my opinion, from a blocking and receiving standpoint. But I went with Deebo Samuel. Obviously, he's probably the number 1 pick on a lot of people's boards. Last year, he had 77 catches for 1,405 yards, 6 touchdowns. He had 59 rushing attempts, 365 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So obviously a lot of touchdowns, double-digit touchdowns. I know part of his trade request, he wanted less rushing attempts. I understand why he's trying to sustain his body, and I expect him to get less rushing attempts, but maybe that can lead to more passing attempts and more passing touchdowns. So we're going to see either way. I expect him to receive a heavy dose of targets and a heavy dose of touches. He's too talented with every game plan. Moving on to the Seattle Seahawks, I went with DK Metcalf. Obviously, we got to see what they're going to do at quarterback. I think they're going to go with Geno Smith. I remember Geno Smith from the Jets. Yeah, we're going to have to see. Last year, DK Metcalf had 75 catches for 965 yards and 12 touchdowns. 12 touchdowns. We know he can go up and get it. We know he can take a slant to the house. And if y'all pick it, which is probably going to happen in Seattle this year, we know he can run somebody down, hawk him down, tackle him, and make the play. Dude just make plays. We're going to move on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I went with Leonard Fournette. I expect Tom Brady to get him a lot of passes out of the backfield. Last year, he had 180 rushing attempts for 812 yards, 8 touchdowns, 69 catches for 454 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he already getting a lot of passing attempts. We know Mike Evans is going to catch a lot of balls, have a couple touchdowns, but with Chris Godwin out, I expect Leonard Fournette to have more touches. Julio Jones is an intriguing piece. He's a little advanced in his age. He might do a little something to take the roof off, maybe even provide Leonard with more breathing room, but Leonard was my pick for the Tampa Bay. For Tennessee, I thought it was fairly easy. He only played 8 games, and Derrick Henry had this production in 8 games. 219 attempts, 937 yards, 10 touchdowns, 18 catches, and 154 yards receiving in only 8 games. This King Henry, I understand why he'll be a lot of people's first pick. He going to get you touchdowns, get you yards. It ain't even too much to say. Finally, we're going to end off with the Washington Commanders, and I went with Antonio Gibson. Again, I will understand why anybody would go with Terry McLaurin. I will understand that. But I went with versatility here. Last year, he had 258 attempts for 1,087 yards with 7 touchdowns rushing. He caught 42 balls for 294 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think a lot of people are asleep on Antonio Gibson, to be honest. I think a lot of people is. I think he's a good flex option. I know if I have the opportunity, I'm going to pick him. I think he's a good pick, a great value, and I think he's continuing to ascend. I think Carson Wentz is an upgrade at quarterback. He's going to get him the ball. They're going to throw it more. So I understand. I believe that there's going to be a huge upgrade in production here on already good production. I can see this guy making a Pro Bowl this year. But I want to thank y'all for journeying with me through this episode 8. We did good. Again, y'all like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube. Listen to us on Spotify. Visit Hattie's Collection. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.